men and 2 women between the ages of 41 and 65, okay, who she is accusing it's harassed me, it's harassed my family's testifying. It doesn't matter whether or not I did these things to Emmanuel when he was 14. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you're hurting my feelings bringing them up. You could just imagine this argument in court. Like if Jeffrey Dahmer was alive and you're like tweeting at Jeffrey Dahmer and you're a sick cannibal pedophile. And then he's like, that actually doesn't matter because you hurt my feelings. That's really mean. I don't want you. That's harassment. You can't just call me those things. That's the vibe of what's going on in France right now. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it hurt Brigitte's feelings. And so what has happened here is that they testified that these tweets were malicious, they were degrading, they were, quote, insulting, they were intentionally harmful to Brigitte. And of the 10 defendants, 8 were given suspended sentences between 4 to 8 months. And a 9th was sentenced to 6 months in jail because that person just didn't even attend the hearing. That's what's happening right now in France. Okay. 3 of the individuals were described as the instigators, and they were then ordered to have their social media accounts suspended for 6 months for retweets. She feels harassed by the truth. You can harass people with the truth now. And to be clear, all of them were ordered to attend an online course regarding hate speech. Hate speech can also be true speech. If they hate it, that's it. And they have to collectively pay Brigitte Macron what's known as moral damages, around $12,000. Moral damages. I am telling you that because you need to fully compute what they want to do here, okay? That's the purpose of this lawsuit against me, never before seen lawsuit against me, is that evil people are getting caught doing evil things, and those evil people still have enough power to pass through legislation and to establish new laws to make it so that they never get caught again. Or even when they do get caught, you have to shut up about it. This lawsuit that Brigitte has brought against me matters deeply. I am telling you guys, this lawsuit, everyone should be paying attention to every single filing pertaining to this lawsuit in Delaware, a place where I'm pretty sure France has been running the game since the Revolutionary War, because I believe that the feds are colluding because they want to introduce new speech laws in this country and make people fearful to tell the truth about the things that they have actually done. Wild. I just felt like I needed to fully present to you what was actually happening in France. Prison. 65-year-old person. Maybe they just retweeted. Who knows? We have to get into the documentation. But this is not defamation. She's not making the argument that these things are untrue. She's making the argument that her feelings are hurt because you know that she was born with a penis. Wild times, guys. We'll be right back after a brief break. All right, guys, jumping in here to tell you about Tax Network USA, because I know a lot of people owe back taxes or they have not filed taxes. I actually have to have.
Switch to TurboTax. File free in the app by 2/28.
Thank you so much.
So now, so far, the poll is saying that 77% think that the exploding mic or electrocution are plausible. Very interesting.
I appreciate the open minds. You know, at this point, got to keep an open mind, I'd say. I mean, I think so many of us have seen that the official narrative just does not, it's not up to snuff.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and bring our guest on. Welcome, John. Did you want to introduce yourself?
I'm John Bray. John Aaron Bray on X.
And John has been very in-depth covering the microphone theory, and he has a lot of data to back it up. He has some visuals, and it's basically been his day one theory. Did you want to tell us kind of like how you got into, like what made you kind of go this route? Not super in detail, but just kind of like a high level.
Well, immediately I saw the video and I thought it was AI because it just looked so strange to me. And then my background's in body armor. I developed the refurbishing program for the Army for their IOTVs, OTVs. So I saw how his shirt deformed, and I was certain that he had body armor on. But within the end of the day, it was pretty obvious they didn't. So I started to basically run analysis on it, and that led me to the microphone.
So do you think that, I know you have data, and I know you back stuff up, and you have the program that shows kind of the pressure areas and that kind of stuff, but do you think that any other theories, before we get like really deep into this, are any other theories also interesting or somewhat plausible to you, or do you think that this is the only one?
The only other thing that could really convince me is that he was shot in the chest. That's the from the physical, evidence and the energetic kind of dispersion. That's the only thing that could make any sense to me.
What about some people talking about a round coming in and hitting his necklace and bouncing up?
I just find that really unlikely. It's just the other objects that are involved in the movement. It just doesn't. The energy doesn't align to that sort of scenario.
All right, Kelly, did you want to go ahead and get us started into the meat of this?
Sure. I mean, I want to say first off that I connected with John, gosh, I don't know, at least 2+ months ago. And I so appreciated at that point, I was, no one on X. It's hard when you are trying to really, really passionate about trying to investigate the case, and you want to just talk to people who have insight, who are also equally as passionate about it. And John was willing to really hash out some things with me, and I felt the same way, that there was something that was strange about the mic. And so I've really enjoyed watching John hone his theory over the last several weeks and months. So props to you, John.
Sorry, I can't hear Kelly.
Oh man. Okay.
We can hear you, Kelly.
Okay.
I can't hear Kelly for some reason.
Okay, some people are also saying that your levels aren't balanced, so I think we'll have to turn your mic up a bit. Let me try pulling you off the stage and putting you back on. We apologize. Technical issues come with this kind of stuff.
The beauty of a live show. Can you hear me now?
I still can't hear you.
Oh man.
All right, give me a second here. Let me see if there's something very obvious I can fix this with quickly.
Okay.
This happened with Allie, remember?
It did. It did.
All right. And for those just coming in, today's guest is going to be talking about the exploding mic theory, and it's been his number one theory from day one, and he has a lot of stuff to back it.
And I appreciate. Okay, someone said that my mic is too loud. I can push it away from me, but I haven't changed any of the settings from where I normally have it. But they also said don't turn your mic up, it could explode.
That's funny, but not funny. All right. So you can hear me, John, but she can't hear you.
Yeah, you sound great.
I'm not sure if that's something we can necessarily fix.
Okay, well, maybe the amazing Mike or the amazing Mikey McCoy. It just depends on which conversation you're having.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to go ahead and get started, John, kind of with your theory, what made you lean that direction, I can try and figure out the other audio and stuff with
let's do that.
with Kelly.
Okay. Well, the whole reason I started to do the whole vector map pixel flow was to try to pinpoint where the bullet may have hit him in his bulletproof vest. But in the middle of kind of creating the code to run that, it became obvious that he didn't have a vest on. The pictures with, you could see his nipples, and then it was just, the back line of where he's hunched over in his seat. There's no way even a executive vest could be concealed to that point. So then that left me just to run the code as I had it, and I immediately noticed that there was kind of a epicenter in the center upper sternum of his shirt, and that led me to kind of start to question the three main kind of energetic centers of the event, which is the shirt that pulled up to his face, basically almost to his cheek, the magnetic clasp that moved across his neck, and what I first thought was a lanyard or wire to like an earpiece flying over his head. But it wasn't even a day into the event that someone pointed out that he didn't have an earpiece on. That became pretty obvious. And then better quality video became available, and it was pretty obvious that it was his necklace that flew up and over his head, and it wasn't, a wire. So then I was left with three different things that kind of I had to figure out how to explain how they were obviously tied together, because they started movement at the same time, and they kind of moved in kind of opposite directions of each other. The shirt, pulling up on his face, and the magnetic clasp kind of moved opposite of each other at first, and then the magnetic clasp flows back across his chest as the shirt relaxes. And then the necklace was what puzzled me the most, because it's the most energetic object of the event. It moved the quickest. It had the most amount of energy kind of displaced in it, and it was enough energy to actually break the necklace. So then I refined the code to really hone in on those details. And my first runs, the red dots are mapping the epicenter frame to frame. So every frame there's pixel movement, and wherever there was the most pixel movement in the frame, it maps it with a red dot. When there's a lot of movement going on, it can be random. But when you have a lot of quick movement, it's pretty accurate, especially when you have multiple angles. So between the two front angles that we had, I was able to basically pinpoint the epicenters around his sternum. And then I noticed that the magnetic clasp kind of followed that. So that led me to kind of investigate what the magnetic clasp was all about. And then I found the model of the microphone, and then the pictures of them kind of mounting it on it. So then I started studying in the past, how did he wear the microphone? And when he first got the mic, he wore it on the outside of his shirt. And then it slowly kind of evolved, and then they put it underneath his shirt. And that day, it's kind of like mounted in a peculiar way that it's almost like standing on its side, where it's kind of bulges his shirt out. It looks kind of uncomfortable, and it's at a 45-degree angle. And I kept getting peak maps right below that, like kind of 45 degrees, like a trajectory that matches what you would expect if the bottom of that microphone kind of blew out. So then I found a video of someone actually disassembling the mic, and then I saw where the battery was, and the battery was right in that area. So that led me to start investigate, like, what could this battery be modified somehow? And then it wasn't even a year ago before that event that the Grim pager or Grim beeper attacks, the Mossad pager attacks happened. And I studied those, and I realized that, those pagers were in circulation for over a decade before they were detonated. And the batteries went through airport scanners. They were completely functional that whole time.
That's the key, completely functional.
Yeah, that really opened my mind to the fact that Charlie's microphone was the older model. He had those microphones for quite a while, and he's traveled all over for them. So there was ample opportunity for someone to get a hold of it, and you can see how quickly you can get the battery out of it. You don't need to solder anything. You can just pop it out and basically replace it with a loaded battery, and the user would never know. You could go on using it. It would have approximately 75% of the the charge capacity, and it would take someone that would used it all the way to empty all the time to even notice that it changed. So that made it plausible. And then I started to study the injuries from the pager attacks, which the pagers themselves were alkaline batteries. They were round, like AA style batteries. So they left like black residue, but they didn't leave any burns, and they didn't really like char the victims. And it was pretty directional.
Wait, so you're saying the ones in Lebanon did not leave charring?
Yeah, what they left was the alkaline battery was like the insides of the alkaline battery, like the black residue from the alkaline battery. The walkie-talkies that followed the day after, they had lithium batteries, and they didn't leave any charring or any residue. They were pretty much clean. So that's where I was like, well, that's bizarre, because immediately, you know, like everyone else, you think explosion, you think it's going to be like a lot of radial damage. There'll be charring and residue left. So that opened up to the possibility that it could be a completely clean burn. But then I was kind of perplexed, like why would someone go through the effort of this and not have a means to cover it up, right? If they killed Charlie with a loaded microphone bomb, everyone would know who it is. So that kind of opened up the idea that they would need a patsy. And then the rifle kind of made sense to me, like the weirdness and strangeness about it. But I put my mind in kind of the conspirators, right? If I wanted to pull this sort of event out, I would want the wound and the event to look like a rifle shot. And in my mind, immediately what I thought was it looked like a chest shot. So then I was like, what if this was designed to mimic a chest shot of a 30-06?
So let's talk about that really quick, because a lot of people are going to say, like, what's your official explanation as to why the official narrative wouldn't work?
Well, it's because it's the order of events. So you when you watch the events unfold in slow motion, frame by frame, the necklace, the microphone movement, and the shirt all precede the appearance of the neck wound. And with a high velocity impact to the neck, the zone 2 of the neck in particular, you would have instantaneous effects, right? You would have atomized blood, you would have cavitation. There's no way that you would have, it's at 0.43 seconds delay from when the shirt first moves to when you see the neck wound even appear. And it's almost a whole second before blood appears out of the neck wound.
Yeah, that's the strangest part to me, is that delay.
So then I studied, the forensics of high velocity impacts, and there's so much, case studies on it and examples of people being shot in the neck in the exact same area, and nothing about it made sense. There's no high velocity blood, no blood atomization. And then the strangeness of the leaked autopsy reports, like them trying to say that the C1 was hit when, the trajectory was almost impossible for that to happen. And then like it traveled down to the C6, and that I just couldn't understand why they would go through efforts to try to explain that. But when I got to kind of the aftermath, right? So once I thought I had a solid grasp on what caused the shirt to move, what caused the necklace to move, what caused his body to react in the way it did, the way his hands grasped together, his elbows lift up and his arms come in, and particularly his legs. If you look at his legs, his knees immediately come together and he lifts himself out of the chair. And so that's indicating that he had mid-brain and brainstem damage. And then that made perfect sense to me. That's why they had to lean on the C1 damage, because that's the only way that you could have that sort of physical reaction from a ballistic impact. Outside of a headshot, it would have to be at the very base of the spine for a bullet to cause a physical reaction like that. So, it made me think that possibly the narrative was being crafted kind of on the fly. And so then I started questioning the neck wound, like the bleeding of the neck wound, the delayed bleeding of it, and the shape of it. And particularly the trajectory of the magnetic clasp, which basically tells you the trajectory of the whole microphone, right? They were connected together. and how they lined up perfectly with where the wound appeared. And then the wound had this strange, rectangular appearance and the delayed bleeding. And if you look very closely, frame by frame, you can actually see the deformation of the flesh. It matches the trajectory of the microphone, the direction it was traveling. So
a quick question that people are going to have is, are you saying that the microphone itself exploded, or are you saying that something exploded out of the microphone towards his neck?
Well,
or both?
I believe that the microphone was designed to replicate a 30-06 impact to the chest, and there was unforeseen shrapnel that came off of the microphone, either the battery or the magnetic clasp, that struck his neck that they didn't prepare for. And so when the very obvious neck wound became kind of the center point of the event, they had to shift the narrative from a chest shot to a single neck shot. And they had to explain the physical reactions that we all saw by, the C1 impact and the vertebrae damage. When in reality, I believe he probably had chest damage too. And if you remember, there was leaks from the hospital that described massive chest damage. They said his chest was caved in. And even some of the first reports of the autopsy, which the New York Times article even mentioned chest, but then it was redacted and it was changed later. And you can't find any mention of that again. But the whole, even the first witness that I saw from the crowd said that he was shot in the chest and blood came out from underneath his shirt. Yeah. So, I feel like that there was a scramble to cover up any chest wound because they only had a single rifle shot, and you can't have two different wounds with a single rifle shot. And I think that explains the strangeness at the hospital with the physicians and the surgeon not be able to go back in, and then autopsies ordered overnight and then flying him out, and then the security footage from the hospital getting confiscated. It all just seemed kind of out of the ordinary and unnecessary, unless you had something to hide, like a very obvious chest wound, right?
So just real quick, sorry to cut you off there. Some people are saying that he sounds nervous. Yeah, this is not what he does. He does not do podcasts. He does not do interviews regularly. So we're going to be giving him some grace because he is not doing this on a regular basis. So
and I would say that for anyone to hop on a live stream and completely, flesh out their entire very complicated theory of, amongst all these people online is a nerve-wracking thing. So John, I think you're knocking it out of the park. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
John, can you hear
Are you
Kelly?
able to hear me?
I can't, unfortunately.
Oh man. Okay.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we'll just keep rolling with it the way it is. All right. So now some people are asking to have you explain this. So, and actually you said that you either wrote software or you use software for this. So who, I guess you want to walk people about like through the software piece of it, like how you came up with this kind of grid that shows where the pressure and the power and energy was.
Yeah. So I took the MT Labs, the MIT Labs optical flow software, and I modified it to specifically look for epicenters frame to frame. So what it's doing is looking frame to frame to video and looking on how the pixels move. It's because his shirt has those freedom texts across it, and his shirt's white, and then we have the black magnetic clasp on the shirt. It gives us a lot of vectors to track. So basically the software is looking at every frame and it's mapping the movement in between those frames, and then it's putting a red circle on the epicenter of those movements. And you can see the color mapping is showing you where the areas of the highest movement. So it kind of shows you the previous frame where the movement moved from the previous frame to the next
like an
frame.
onion skin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so like in this one, is the red circle where the focus is, or is that just
the red circle is where the peak movement happened from the previous frame to that frame.
Okay,
And
so
you
that's
can
showing
see
movement across.
And you see the heat frame from where the text was. It's showing you the text was in the previous frame. It was there, and then you can see where the text on his shirt is now, where the shirt pulls up across his face.
Yep.
Okay, so quick question on this. So this is a separate theory that I'll probably ask you about, but the electrocution theory, he was saying that, he was trying to explain like the burn under his like chest nipple area. But in your stuff you're showing here, it's not that low, correct? It's higher up on his chest.
Yeah, and the other angle maps it slightly different, because the pixels are going to be different from different angles, but they're both in that general area.
Okay, so they're both kind of by the F of freedom?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Hey, Matt, would you mind asking, I see someone
And,
said, optical.
the shape charge theory basically is that it's not like a general basic explosive. It's not a radial force. It has a small charge and a cone, and it basically directs a high energy jet out of the cone. So it's made to penetrate armor, but you can use it on soft targets too, and it allows you to create a wound that's very similar to a rifle wound, where it leaves a deep wound channel, and it'll even leave copper fragmentation into the wound. So what we're seeing the shirt moving is the overpressurization. So the pressure that didn't penetrate the flesh basically is escaping through the shirt, and that's what causes the shirt to balloon up and move so much. That the shirt that pulls up across his face on the opposite side of the microphone is actually from his necklace. The pendant on his necklace, the cross pendant, is pushed down, and then it can't go down anymore. So then it follows the kind of the path of the necklace and raises up across, and that's what lifts his shirt up across his face.
Okay, so you're saying the downward pressure of the explosion puts pressure down on the pendant, that stretches the necklace, that force builds up, and then it pops back up, and that's why you see it kind of goes vertically, like straight up in the air?
Yeah, if you can actually see one frame where the cross is peeking out next to his face, but it gets caught and the necklace breaks, so then the necklace slides out of the cross pendant, and the cross pendant falls back down, and that's why his shirt falls back down so quickly. And then immediately after that, you'll see the appearance of the wound on his neck.
Okay, interesting. So now let's talk about this really quick. Let's talk about the, actually, let me pull that other one off here really quick and put that on. Okay, so for this.
So you see that part, the magnetic clasp goes on the backside. So that part that we're seeing right now, that he has a suction cup, is against Charlie's chest. And that's the batteries against his chest also. So if the shape charge was put anywhere, it's going to be put in that gold battery right there.
No, I think with the previous pager attacks and the cell phones, they just replaced a portion of the battery, correct?
Right. They basically took 20% of the cell and replaced it with the explosive.
Okay.
And I believe that's what they probably did with this. They just replaced it with a smaller cell battery, a slightly shorter battery, and then they put the shape charge in the end of the space that was left over.
And that would make it so it would still function. He could still live stream and everything with it, but obviously the battery wouldn't last as long.
Exactly.
Okay, now someone is asking you to explain how the pendant broke one more time, just so they can understand it.
Basically, the pendant, the necklace was moved by the force of the explosion, and then it crossed the path of the shape charge. So when the pendant was pushed down, and it met the end of the slack of the necklace, and then it's like a pendulum. It swung up and started to come out of the shirt, and that pulled the necklace across, and it ended up crossing that peak that we see in the middle of his chest, and that's what snapped the necklace. And then the momentum of the necklace forced it over his head. So that's why when we see the necklace fly up and over his head, it's broken. It's a single strand, 26 inches of necklace, instead of being, a loop connected.
Okay, now we've had a few people asking, one, can you share the modified program that you wrote? And then someone else is asking, I should put it on the screen here, is this a Python C++ package, a fork? Like, can we get a more technical explanation for devs?
It's just Python code, and it's shared on my X. You can copy the code and run it yourself. I ran it in Claude 200.
All right, so let me share. So that's his X right there, John Bray. It's John Aaron Bray.
And we don't know at this point what the coroner's report said. I've seen some people asking about that, and I've tried to kind of interject a little bit too. I mean, that's part of the problem, you guys, is that we don't know exactly, what the coroner had to say, what the autopsy said, what the doctors, officially said. I mean, we're going off of third, fourth, fifth party information.
And if you're also taking into consideration things like now Candace is saying that, Colvett never said what he said, or that what he said was made up and that the surgeon never said that. We're kind of getting to the point where can we believe anything that's been told so far? Anything. Yeah. So like the fact that he had broken vertebrae, and like, is that true? We don't even know if, because if people are trying to make these other narratives fit that now, like, well, if he was electrocuted, how do you account for the vertebrae? Do we even know the vertebrae are broken?
And so why the speculation? Because I think inquiring minds want to know. And there are a lot of us who just cannot stand to sit around and wait for, a year plus. And it just doesn't feel right. That's at least, I'll speak for myself in saying that I can't just sit around and twiddle my thumbs and wait. I've got to keep digging.
Yep. And we will just real quick, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Head over and check out Kelly Raybon. She's now on YouTube, and I think she's actually monetized now thanks to you guys. You guys went over there and helped her out. And always check her out on X and Instagram as well.
Thank you.
Like I said, John, I'll put his on the screen again. It's John Bray on X, John Aaron Bray. All right, John, we can go ahead and continue forward. So we talked about the necklace stretching down and coming back up. So the next movement, I guess, so say it explodes, it sends that the magnet and the mic start to go the direction of the, I guess the shape charge would knock it that way.
So a shape charge has to have a standoff. It has to create a jet before it can penetrate. It's not penetrating with brute force. It's actually, creating a high speed jet that's basically turning anything it contacts into liquid. So it needs a 2 centimeter standoff. So they would have to design a primer charge that kind of forces the microphone away from his flesh before the shape charge goes off. And if you look at the particularly Cubs video, the highest resolution video that's kind of to Charlie's right or left hand side, you can see that the microphone lifts up and kind of almost touches his face before it starts to make the trajectory across his body. And it's my belief that that's the primer charge creating the standoff space. And that primer charge is what causes the necklace to move. And then once the primary charge, the shape charge goes off, it actually snaps the necklace. And that's when you see it break loose and fly over his head. And that's when the trajectory of the microphones change from just kind of lifting up to his face to going across his body. And at that same time, we have the shirt coming down. So while we have the microphone going, the magnet clasp and the microphone going across his chest, we have the shirt falling down. And then they kind of like at a certain point cross each other, and you kind of lose sight of the magnetic clasp. And then that's when the wound on his neck appears. So if you look at it frame to frame, there's no single frame where you can see both at the same time. You see the magnetic clasp, and then you don't see it, and then you see a wound on his neck. And I'm not 100% certain that it is the magnetic clasp. It could be the magnetic clasp or the battery. They're very similar shape. As you saw in the video before, they're both rectangular. But I am sure the trajectory of the microphone and the trajectory matches perfectly with the appearance of the wound. And the microphone kind of snaps back. And you can just see kind of a bulge where it is, but you don't necessarily ever see the full magnetic clasp again. So it's the timing and the trajectory is what led me to believe that it was a blunt rectangular object from the microphone that causes the neck wound, combined with the actual physical, traits of the wound itself. It's not a high velocity wound. That was a medium velocity wound. And that because of the delayed bleeding, and then also the deformation of the skin. It was just, the skin was flexed outwards. It wasn't like a cavitation from a high energy impact. And then the bleeding was so strange and delayed. And we can't show it here, but I actually have code that has mapped the fluid dynamics of the blood, and I've been able to actually track the rectangular object falling out of his neck from 2 different angles. So
Okay,
not only did we have the trajectory matching the portion where the wound appears, but I also have a rectangular object, flat black object falling out of the wound from 2 different angles also.
Okay, so just to go over that again in a summary. So you're saying from the explosion, are you saying like a piece of plastic went into his neck and that popped back out when he bled?
Either the magnetic clasp or the battery. It was something dense and rectangular.
Okay, so you don't think it was like shrapnel from the mic exploding?
That's what I mean. It's shrapnel from it, but the shrapnel was the dense object being the magnetic clasp or the battery itself.
Unintentional.
Okay, so so in the explosion, I'm trying to remember who. I think it was Cameron Vance. Have you seen that video where he did some testing with a exploding mic?
No, I haven't.
So he's holding like a stick, and he has some kind of explosive. I don't think it's like PT. What is that called? PET or whatever. But
Yeah.
But he has some other kind of explosive in there, and he has the mic, and he puts it under the shirt, and he explodes it. And every time he explodes it, the magnet flies straight away from the body. And a lot of people are asking, like, how can the mic and the mic magnet go towards like anywhere? Shouldn't it just explode away from the body?
It's because it's a shaped charge. Imagine it's like a jet. So it's not explosive where it's a radial explosive where it's exploding in all directions. This is an explosion that has a directed path. And
So
the
in this case-
only expansion comes out of that directed path, the cone. So it's like, like a rocket engine. When you launch a rocket engine, it just doesn't explode everywhere. It sends
makes
a
sense.
directed path in one direction, and that causes a trajectory, and it follows that trajectory quickly.
So that would mean in this case, equal and opposite reaction. That would mean that the shape charge would have had to have been pointed down and away from him, correct? To push everything up towards him.
Right. And so the variable comes in is the primer charge, where they have to create the standoff space. So combined with the odd angle that the microphone was kind of mounted on him, it wasn't mounted flat against his body. It was kind of like stood on its side. And then the standoff charge, which it's my belief that they anticipated the mic to be flat on his body, and the standoff charge was made to raise the microphone directly away from its body before the primary shape charge went off. But because the microphone was kind of mounted on its side, when the standoff charge went off, it lifted it up. So then it changed the trajectory. When the shape charge went off, it basically created like a rocket engine that caused it to travel across his chest instead of it directing the charge directly into his chest. And a shape charge is 90% efficient, more than 90% efficient of directing the energy to one direction. So the whole equal and opposite, it doesn't really apply because we're sending less than a gram of metal cone in a high-speed jet into the flesh. So it's not like a bullet or a traditional ballistic where you're sending a heavy object in the opposite direction.
Okay, so next question in simple terms. How would this microphone explode with enough force to kill someone? So do you think that this has enough charge to cause all the reaction that we saw in that small of a package?
It's because it's concentrating. It's like a water jet where you're basically taking all that energy in that charge and you're directing it to a very small stream. And because you're creating an acceleration because you're forcing this expansive force down a very small cone. It reaches Mach 7. So anything it contacts, it basically turns it to liquid. And so it's deep penetrating. That's why they use it for, to defeat tank armor and things like that. But with soft tissue, it's even more devastating because there's not as much resistance. So it would create a deep channel just like a 30-06 impact, but it would do it with a minimum amount of charge, less than 2 grams.
All right, so I am pulling up. This is just for reference for people. Let me see if I can share this here really quick. So this right here. Let me get this picture up. Give me 1 second. That's interesting how it makes you pull the previous one down first. All right. So this is one of the pagers from Lebanon.
Yeah,
And
that in particular is the walkie-talkie.
walkie-talkie. Okay. So now I'm just bringing this up because with the Candace Owens kind of dropped that bomb in one of her videos saying that there's the little black specks on the floor inside of her car. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah.
So the car that Charlie was in, and they're saying that might be from, people are implying that might be from the explosion, like pieces of the pager or of the, in this case, of the audio that exploded, and these little tiny pieces they're seeing in the car were from that. What do you think about that?
I believe.
Yeah, I'm
that-
actually the one that sent her the message about that. The type of plastic